Welcome to the East Peter Township Public Meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
All right, good evening and welcome to the Monday, October 7th, 2024 meeting of the East Peter Township Board of Supervisors. Joined in the room by Mr. Ted Gallagher, Mr. Michael Thornton, Mr. Roger Rutt, and Chairman Corey Meyer is unavailable this evening. We have no members joining us on Zoom. So if you'll rise and join me, I pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. We have copies of our agenda in the back for any members of the public who are here. So we will start with, is there any public comment for any non-agenda items? If you're here to talk about anything that's on the agenda, there'll be plenty of time for public comment on that. But if you're here for something off agenda, you're welcome to come forward. State your name for the record and tell us what you want to say.
Good evening. My name's Dan. Reside at Meadow Lane here in the township. My public comments are about the, I guess last week you posted the positions of zoning officer and assistant zoning officer as open positions. My understanding, as at least that's what's on the website. Can that be confirmed? Those positions are open?
Yes. Yes.
Considering that there's a number of people in the township that I think are a little unhappy with how the zoning ordinance has been administered in the past number of years, I have a proposal of mine to make to consider as these positions are filled. Maybe an approach that helps, win the trust of the residents in the community and creates a collaborative approach that hopefully we're all happy with. That might be impossible, but. So my proposal is to send out newsletters and emails to the township residents asking for their help to fill the positions, specifically for them to refer candidates that they believe to be good people to fill the positions. In our world today, networking is everything, and we have so much great talent here in the community that it seems a missed opportunity to only advertise on LinkedIn or online platforms. There's some really great people here in the community I think would be excellent candidates, the right experience that most people just don't know the positions are open. So I think, enlisting the community's help to fill them would not only help win their trust that the local government is doing everything they can to foster a transparent process, but we might actually get some great talent. In my opinion, these positions should be filled by residents from the community versus outside the community, and should have a heavy emphasis on experience in construction rather than college degrees. So I think that's it.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your comments. Any additional public comment for non-agenda items? Did anything come in online? Now we will proceed to our consent agenda. So the consent agenda is the approval of the October 7th, 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting agenda. Approval of the minutes of the Monday, September 16th, 2024 regular meeting. Time extension officer offer for township review and action for Peter Sean Stormwater Management Plan 24-12, 702 Hartman Station Road. The applicant is offering a time extension of 90 days. If accepted, this will provide the township until January 20th, 2025 to act on this plan. Second extension for this application. Item 4D, request for reduction in financial security, Conestoga Valley Middle School Project Plan 19-04, 2114 Horseshoe Road. Applicant is requesting a reduction in the financial security. Township engineer has provided a recommendation dated September 30th, indicating that $2,281,354.76 can be reduced from the posted funds, leaving a balance of $476,033.91 for the project. We have item 4E, approval to pay all invoices from all funds totaling $829,261.20. That's this one here? Yeah, you said 821. Sorry, $827,261.20. A couple significant items there are $144,268.28 distribution to fire relief associations, with $36,067.07 to each of the 4 township fire relief associations, and $24,985.50 to Alpha Space Control for intersection pavement markings.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A through E.
Second. Motion by Mr. Gallagher, second by Mr. Rutt. Is there any public comment on any of these items? Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Passes. Next, we have item 5, the presentation of the change to fire apparatus replacement program. Is there anyone here to discuss this item?
Yes, we have several people here. Hopefully that will speak to it, but I'll try to introduce it. The Emergency Services Committee created a subcommittee to look at financial matters related to fire services. And the first thing that the committee tackled was looking at the existing apparatus replacement programs and working to come up with a change or modification to that program that hopefully would be viewed as positive going forward, at least for the next 5 years, with the intention to have the plan reviewed at least every 5 years. So that plan was prepared. I was presented to the Emergency Services Committee as a whole at their September meeting. And after discussion, the Emergency Services Committee made a motion to recommend this new apparatus replacement plan to the Board of Supervisors. Some of the highlights, which are noted in the information provided, is that this plan would be a change from the prior plan in that 2 pieces of apparatus in each fire company would be included in the plan rather than 3. That each apparatus would be expected to be replaced after 25 years rather than 20 years as it was in the prior plan. And the funding participation would be 75% township, 25% fire company, where in the prior plan it was 60% township, 40% fire company. We have several members of the finance committee subcommittee, I should say, that helped work on the plan. And I don't know if any of you want to say anything to it.
I'll expect someone else to be.
Yeah.
President of the Bergen, I was on the finance committee along with Don and here at the CD, but there was 2 members from each of the 4 faculties on the committee. We met, probably at least a half a dozen times, discussed and looked at a few different options, mainly with updating the apparatus plan, and as such, just kind of laid out there that basically changed it from 3 pieces at a 60-40 split to 2 pieces at a 75-25 split. Kind of the thought process behind that was that the 2 pieces are the most important. The two, for the most part, the 3rd piece for the fire company is like a squad piece or a more of a kind of a, just an extra piece that more of a manpower. That so the 2 primary pieces are the most important, and we felt like that was the most important thing to fund. And from a revenue or from cost perspective, probably very little impact. I don't think speculative spreading it out over 25 years instead of 20 should be very probably cost neutral to the township. Might even say quality of the apparatus we can make it last 25 years. Some of the fire companies have already been doing that, so this kind of incentivizes them to maintain the equipment and make it last 25 years. We looked at a couple other plans, but they were all fairly similar to that, which is what we came up with. All 4 companies voted in favor of it, so it was a unanimous approval of it. And so, we just ask you guys to please support us and by passing it. So I'd be happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Don would as well. If any questions, but if you are familiar with the other watching. And I think, Hutch, as part of that, are you also approving the 2% increase in the annual operating? Did you want to talk about that, or was that part of this?
Happy to talk about it. We normally, that's sort of part of the budget process, but, we're in budget season anyway, so it's fine. The increase in the regular operating fund contributions that the township provides to each of the fire companies have been increasing 2% each year, and that would continue under this plan. The other change in that regard was that the committee recommended that an additional $10,000 a year be contributed to Lafayette Fire Company in recognition of the additional expenses associated with maintaining the ladder truck in particular. So that would also be part of the ongoing future operating expense contributions.
This will be the first time that we've done that. The ESC has done that, where we've actually recommended one fire company actually get additional funding. But again, we talked about it, and I think there was a very, mutual agreement that that was a fair thing, reasonable thing to do. And I guess the last thing I would just say is that, again, you probably won't find anybody in the township that's much more fiscally conservative, small government type person than myself. And I think it's a very good deal for the township residents and business. Serve it very well. It's also fair to the fire companies. I think probably the biggest challenge going forward the fire companies have, we did look at where each of the fire companies stands in terms of their balance sheets, their P&Ls, and we felt like they're all 4 in very solid shape. I think probably the challenge going forward, we didn't talk a lot about this week, but anytime you get into a large capital purchase, whether it's station renovations, remodeling, those kinds of things, that will present a challenge. But in terms of operating where we're at right now, I think this will do a very good job of continue to serve our needs. So thank you for considering.
Thank you for all the time that you guys put in this.
Discussion from the board, the presentation.
Well, I'll just say that, it seems to me, and being on the ESC committee, I remember the refurbishing seemed like one of the catalyst topics that started this, but fairness was a huge piece of it. The expense of new pieces, incredibly expensive now. The challenges of fundraising by the fire departments, raising the money. And, the idea that, no, not everything is exactly equal, but fair was the key. And, at the last meeting, this had, I think, the potential to be a very contentious committee and the results, and it came out, I couldn't ask for anything better. So I really appreciate everybody working. I think having Ralph on that committee and really showing the history and making sure that people saw the numbers the same way, just excellent job. So.
One thing, if I may just add one more thing, Mike, I didn't mention, but if you look at the fine print or the the notes of the plan, we did also make some accommodations for fire companies, giving them the flexibility to buy used or refurb their equipment, which hadn't really been spelled out in the previous plan. We've been doing some of that already on a case by case basis, but it sets out a little more clearly parameters. If fire companies choose to either refurb or buy used, the plan will come.
Ready for a motion?
I don't think do we need to take a motion, or is this something we just address during our budgeting process? And we usually do by a resolution that spells this out in greater detail than just this.
Board's pleasure. Typically, we have had some action taken on the plan itself. And then, in the budgeting process, making sure that we've budgeted the funds necessary to fund the plan.
Yeah, I'd like to see, just a few things I'd like to see, in a little more detail would be, I was trying to find the last printout of this. So what was the one what's the current one we have? So I can compare what we currently have to the new proposal. And then the other one that would probably be beneficial, which I think we've seen before, would just be, we're making contributions for the annual cost for each fire company, and then this looks like an additional 10,000 for operating costs, recognizing that Lafayette has higher operating costs. But it'd be good to see maybe what are the operating costs for each fire department for a year. To see the previous plan compared to this plan, so we can see where the specific changes were made in that. It looks like it's very thorough. We've gone through it, but this is my first time digging into the numbers of it.
Okay, as far as the financial information, every year we do that financial summary of all fire companies' information from the prior year. Is that what you're talking about in terms of the financial?
Well, pulling out specifically the operations, operating costs of each fire company, assuming they're different than their full income statement.
That's what we did with we pulled the 5-year numbers before we agreed to the 10.
On the apparatus. We did do that.
Yes, we did do that.
You're looking for all the operating costs.
So we've got the operating costs, you've got the apparatus sort of fixed costs, and then you have all the extra costs of running a fire department.
You should have that in your
Summary statement, I think, has all
that we turn in, and that just got finished not about a month or so ago.
Yeah, we usually, it's supposed to be all the information to us by April. It usually takes a little while, so it's early summer.
So the township has that.
Okay. So that's what I would like to see. I know if you have it, just share it with the board.
I'll do that again.
In my notes.
Well, would that be a factor that could be in the budgeting process? You see that?
Because we're looking at the budgeting process both towards how much are we contributing towards the apparatus funding plan to make sure that there's enough in that fund. So when these pieces come due, they're covered. And we've been making regular contributions to that. It's want to make sure we're making the right amount. And if that has to change based off of this, we've got the line item, which is towards the operating costs. What does that increase look like? How is the operating costs? Are the fire company's operating costs going up at 6%, but we're only increasing funding by 2%? Are they flat and they're asking for a 2% increase? Those are the two numbers that I'd be looking at. What is their trend in operating cost increase? And is 2% an appropriate amount?
But not discussing it with the idea that this changes. Maybe changes decisions we make in the budget process.
Yeah, everything we put in the budget, we have to put in. So I view this as, here's the recommendation from the ESC for what we should put in the budget. But the budget needs to be looked at as a whole. So I'd rather look at this in the context of, as we're discussing all of our other pieces in the budget, not just as a separate item.
Motion to accept the plan, subject to the budgeting process changes that may, understanding that the budget process may force some changes.
Somebody like
A motion that we accept the fire apparatus replacement program as presented by the subcommittee, and understanding that they are subject to the overall budgeting process.
Okay, motion by Mr. Thornton, seconded by Mr. Gallagher. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for all the great work.
All right, next item on the agenda is item 6, business request for Rockville parcel number 2, number 23-32, conditional approval, park and open space. Yeah, so this.
Claudia Shank for McNeese Falls and Norwich on behalf of the applicant. I'm joined by Kristen Archek and Jeff Bernbach, who are also here representing the project. I just have some exhibits I'm going to chat about. I think most of what's in this packet are things that you've seen already, but I thought it would be helpful to organize them so they're close at hand as we're going through. So again, just as a quick reminder about the project that we're here to discuss tonight, we are talking about parcel 2 of the Rockville Square redevelopment. This is a 6.8 acre property that's north of Rockville Road and south of, or west rather, of South Willowdale Drive. Again, part of a larger redevelopment project that we're taking. I think the phase 5 is phase 2, parcel 5 being reviewed by the township. Regional commercial zoning and the commercial redevelopment overlay is being used for the project. Proposed on this parcel are 4 multifamily apartment buildings that have 32 units each, the total of 128 units, public water, public sewer, and then there's a portion of the trail system that's going to be incorporated into the overall development that is on that site. So the board has conditionally approved this plan. One of the conditions of that approval is establishment of a park and rec fee or fee in lieu of dedication of parkland. There's no park dedication proposed as part of this project. The first exhibit in your packet is just an excerpt of the relevant ordinance section, the current ordinance dealing with park, open space, and greenway provision. I'm going to reference it as I'm talking, and I thought it would just be helpful to have it in view in case you want to read any of the sections on your own. So the ordinance does require that we dedicate 0.027 acres of park and recreation space for every dwelling unit. And that must be composed of 70% what is referred to as primary recreation space or flat areas, a ball field, something of that nature. 30% can be greenway or natural resource space. That would be lineal greenways, that would be walking paths, trails, things of that nature. So again, the project is 128 dwelling units. If we take those units and multiply them by the 0.027 acres per unit that we're required to dedicate, we get just under 3.5 acres, 3.456 acres that are required for dedication. We do have an opportunity in this case to request a credit. If you turn to tab 2 in your packet, you'll see a map that shows the project. But highlighted in green is the portion of the trail that we are proposing to construct in connection with the project. It's going to be a 12-foot wide pedestrian bicyclist trail, goes along the western and southern portions of lot 2. Next, it'll be extended into the next phase of the project as well. It's greenway or natural resource space, or that's what it would qualify for under the ordinance. The total acreage involved here is 0.32 acres, so less than 30% of the overall acreage required for dedication. So we're proposing to apply that 0.32 acres as a credit against what we would be required to dedicate, leaving us with 3.136 acres required for dedication. The second sheet in Exhibit 2 is an opinion of probable cost that was prepared by RGS Associates for the costs associated with construction of that trail, which will factor into the analysis here shortly. In terms of the remaining acreage, so those roughly 3 acres that we are required to dedicate and do not have credit for related to the trail. As you know, your ordinance allows the developer to pursue a number of alternatives when it comes to dedication of parkland. They can construct new facilities, they can reserve private land, they can pay a fee in lieu of dedication, or some combination of those alternatives. So what we are proposing, what we have proposed at the beginning of the project, is to pay a fee in lieu of dedication. If you look at your current subdivision and land development ordinance, what it says relative to payment of a fee in lieu of dedication, this would be on the second page of the ordinance, subsection D. It says that if you're paying a fee in lieu of dedication, it must be at least equal to the assessed value multiplied by the common level ratio of the 2 types of space, primary recreation and greenway or natural resource, which would have otherwise been required for dedication. So we initially submitted a letter to the township, to the board, dated August 15th, 2024. That contained our initial proposal. I'm assuming the board has seen that in terms of fee in lieu of dedication. We based that proposal on the cost to acquire parkland in the township. So basically what we did is we found 2 parcels that would be suitable parkland parcels. In fact, one is a community park, East Lampeder Township Community Park. We also looked at 46 Bowman Road, and we determined what the assessed value of each of those pieces of property would be to calculate estimated per acre value if you were to acquire similarly situated land. If you turn to tab 3, you will see the breakdown of those costs. And the 4th tab is a map that shows where those 2 parcels that we selected are in relationship to the property that's being developed. And again, this is all spelled out in the August 15th letter. So, based on our assessment, those 2 parcels, when you take the assessed value, land only, multiply it by the common level ratio, and adjust it for acre value, we came up with $20,000 an acre for the East Lampeder Community Park parcel and $33,000 an acre for the Bowman Road parcel, which is a parcel of vacant land, primary recreation type of space. So based off of those calculations, we took the average. We proposed that a fair cost per acre of parkland would be $26,830. We then multiplied that times the 3 acres required for dedication, and we subtracted from that the cost of installation of the trail, which is roughly $42,000, and that's reflected on the RGS cost opinion. That is the second sheet in tab 2. If you look at that cost opinion, you're looking not at the ultimate total, which would include the 10% contingency, as is typical on cost opinion. We'd be looking at the subtotal of the $42,282. So that was how we arrived at the initial proposal. That proposal was a fee in lieu of dedication of $41,857.24. Township staff responded to that proposal. They took the position, or taking the position, that the fee should be based on the value of the parcel that is being developed, so the Rockdale Square lot. That calculation in terms of the per acre value is on tab 3, the second section down. You can see Rockdale, being a regionally commercially zoned developed property, has quite a bit of higher land value than parkland would in the township. Assessed at $512,000. When you do the math, multiplying the common level ratio and netting out the acreage, that becomes 133 acres, which we would submit is far more than the township would need to acquire land that would be suitable for these residents to use. And that would result in a fee of $1,000 that's without subtracting out the installation of the trail. We did approach, or I approached the township solicitor last week with an interim proposal that we are willing to offer in resolution. of this matter. We discussed it internally, would be willing to base the fee off of a cost to acquire parkland of $50,000 per acre. Again, I think that's quite a bit more than what it would actually cost to acquire parkland, but I did find some evidence that, you know, the cost to acquire and the cost to develop program. So I would suggest that I think $50,000 would be sufficient both to acquire and program 3 acres of land, which is what would be required here. The math for that would take us to about $56,800 in terms of a fee, less the credit to install the trail, takes us to $115,000. So what we suggested as a proposal would be to round that total up to $120,000 total fee in lieu of dedication. And we basically $30,000 per building paid at the time building permit issuance. So that's the matter that is this evening. You know, I'm concerned, we have a concern in addition to the fact that reading of the ordinance is correct. Fee is supposed to be calculated. To calculate the fee based on the assessed value of a piece of commercial property like this would directly discuss I think that's a real concern. Obviously, if you were going to develop a piece of agricultural land, vacant R1 land, something of that nature, the fee would be much lesser. It also creates a situation where the fee per unit is going to change drastically depending on where in the township the project is being developed. Additionally, I would suggest that the way the township is proposing that this fee be calculated doesn't take into consideration the difference in value between primary recreation space and greenway space, which is something the ordinance expressly contemplates as being part of the consideration. And so for all of those reasons, we're asking the board to consider our alternative proposal, settlement proposal, if you would, of the total 120,000 for the fee for this phase. So we are happy to answer any questions that the board has.
So I would say that you recognize the ordinance says for the fee in lieu, it's to be based on the assessed value of the land. Your contention is the value of that land. Maybe you tell me, what is the contention against that?
So it says the assessed value of the land required for development. It does not say the assessed value of the parcel that is being developed. So the land that would be required for dedication, I would suggest that would be parkland, comparable parkland, as opposed to a piece of commercial property.
So I know I talked this the applicant as well briefly, and my recommendation was we recently updated this. We checked the last several that we've done. And I don't know if staff, I know you provided one of these, but what are the last several redevelopments that use this updated ordinance that we passed on calculating that? Might be worth refreshing our memories.
This furniture project's the only one that we could think of internally that's been done since the time of the change to the ordinance, which is relatively recent.
And then I know we discussed it when we officially approved the Sheets plan. Have they come in with the actual dollar amount yet? So Sheets is still outstanding. I know that was they raised a similar concern at the planning commission meeting, but they have not come forward with their fee at this point. So Gish's Furniture, I think, is the only, again, same zoning, commercial 3 zone on the same road. And they did, and what was their fee in lieu was $142,889 an acre.
That was the per acre value that was used to calculate their fee in lieu of.
Check your book. Next might be, that if you extrapolate the interpretation here to include parcel 5, the difference in our two approaches is very significant. I mean, you talk about $1.2 million over the entire development. That's what we're talking about, as opposed to perhaps a small. I don't know what that other thing, but the application was probably as a lesser development. This is a very significant performance of that's the difference in terms of the 400 units. It's a very significant number.
Well, we agreed with the proposal that the credit for the area of the walkway and the credit for the cost of the walkway, subject to the township engineer's agreement on the estimate of cost, should be credits against the fee in lieu. And we certainly agree with that. I would expect that when parcel 5 comes in, there are going to be a number of on-site recreation improvements that will also be credits against the fee in lieu of for that parcel. But the only thing that's before the board tonight is parcel 2.
When you mentioned on-site recreation improvements, you mean the on-site clubhouse and pool we plan on putting in for the community?
Parcel 5.
Parcel 5. Is that also supposed to be considered a recreation? That was one of the questions we had. Sure, it's going to be interpreted. We're providing it in terms of the clubhouse and pool, dog park, all that. Are those considered? Would they be credits?
We'll talk about that when we have parcel 5.
But what have we done in the past? Yeah, that'd be, we've done several in the past. And that's where I think we've typically done the best is if it's open to the public, then it's recreation space for apartments complexes. And if it's not open to the public, it's not. That's my memory of the last several apartments. So probably the helpful direction is what have we done with the last several apartments that we approved?
To be candid, it's a position I've often seen townships take. It's a position I've never fully understood, because to me, if you're providing an amenity for the residents of the community, it shouldn't need to be open to the general public in order for it to qualify. But I do know that's the position many municipalities take.
The purpose of these provisions is to provide for the additional recreation demand that new development will place on the township. And the residents who will be part of the development are also going to be residents of the township. And they have to have their recreation needs addressed as well. So whether addressed on-site or off-site is the question. And if they're provided for on-site, they're provided for on-site. If they're not, then the township needs to provide them. And that's where the fee in lieu of comes into play, that we then have a resource to use to go address that recreation need.
Actually, I was to discuss that. Actually, that exactly, because people who are kind of green people who have been live in a development that came from a commercial piece don't use more park facilities than people who are in a development on a park piece of property, but yet they're being charged almost 10 times that amount under this ordinance. So that's how it works out. If I build the same units on a property that wasn't assessed this way, because it wasn't a development on that property before that, they would be charged. They don't use 10 times more facilities than the other people who live in the green development. But yet it's 8 or 10 times that amount that you're charging these people for their recreation, and they have the facilities. They probably use much less of the township facilities and no recreation. Yet they're charged 10 times more. It flies in the face of reason. It doesn't make any sense. And it's not a fear of playing field. But
The basis of the ordinance, the history of it is that prior to the most recent amendment, the language was the pre-development value of the land being developed. And the board felt that They didn't want to be in the process, in a negotiation every time that a development came in, so the board adopted an ordinance that was a formula. And it was to be based upon the assessed value, and that's all that the staff is saying, that we believe ordinance to read and that we should provide. They don't have another piece of land other than the land that they own to offer.
I think our position would be to use the land that we own as the metric, creates a situation where you have drastically unequal fees from one project to another, and you are basically telling developers if you would be better off to buy a farm and develop that than you would be to redevelop a piece of commercial.
Factor 10. Even 10.
Questions or comments from the board?
The Gish property was our point of reference.
That's
In the new ordinance.
That's the only project that I can think of that's been handled through the current ordinance.
This one's in process and the Sheets property is also in process. Which would be then the only ones in our commercial district to have some comparison to.
I guess it'd be fair to say this is the only residential project that I think has been considered at this point under the board.
Any thoughts, Roger?
Well, I think we can say that, every time we do an ordinance, we try and do it the right way, but we can admit we make mistakes. This is the ordinance too. This project, me, and I've said this before, there we had land that was basically paved over. I mean, we had an ocean of asphalt out there, and I think it's a gateway project coming into our township. I mean, I'm ready to do the negotiations to move this forward.
I think the goal that we set out with the current ordinance to level the playing field and not just negotiate it every single time, I think is the right approach that we took. I think we should look at that. I think your point is a fair point that basically says right now the incentive is to buy land that has a cheaper assessed value and develop that rather than redevelop existing land. So I think we should look at that and say either we want to change it so we're incentivizing redevelopment of existing land rather than development of open land. I think that should be the incentive, and we should be making it easier to do infill redevelopment projects rather than more difficult to. So that could be, we look at changing how that formula is calculated, or another option would be establishing each year what is that dollar amount, what for green space in the township, and it equally applies to all redevelopment projects. I think those are two ways that we could continue to have a formula that developers apply the formula rather than negotiating each time, but it does make it more fair across the board or reshift the incentives towards making it easier to redevelop rather than easier to essentially develop undeveloped land.
I mean, this, as I've read this board, this project met all the criteria that we were looking for. Urban growth boundary, big plot out there that was basically underutilized. This gives us tax revenue going forward after these units are built. And, we're not unlike any other township that, tax revenues are going to be harder 10 years from now than they are now. It's just going to be tax increase after tax increase if we don't get the Fernmore type projects in here and, not grease the skids, but make it easy, make it fair for them to come in and do these projects.
So may I ask, when was the ordinance last updated?
2022.
Years ago. So after, the zoning change for this property? Yes. Mixed use. Correct.
The other point, which I think Ralph is alluding to, is this is the challenge of the way we're developing the property is if you look at sort of the sketch plan you have as a whole, there is more open space in the full sketch plan. And then when we look at what you're also planning to do with our streetscape plan to improve that site to make it so that we have multimodal access between the site and neighboring sites. When we look at that in totality, I think the board could easily look and say, all right, here's how much that we're willing to give as a credit to do all of that. The problem is we're developing it one parcel at a time, which makes it difficult to do sort of one calculation for the fee instead of doing it each time.
Yeah, and we are looking to move forward. I mean, this is really the last piece in the puzzle for us to record the plan. So while I agree with your point that, there's a lot in the next parcel to take into consideration, I unfortunately think we sort of have to look at this one for what it is. But of course, it's not lost on us the implications of the decision that gets made to this parcel and how that might be applied to the next portion of the project.
A process question for staff. Since the last change was made by ordinance, do we have the flexibility to deviate from that, or are we required to amend the ordinance in order to do something different?
I don't have a law degree, so I'm not the township solicitor, but I believe the board has the authority to, as council has suggested, settle the question.
So then actions that we could take tonight are, we could say the ordinance is the ordinance. Do it or don't do it. It's up to you. Or we could accept what the applicant is offering as their dollar amount. Or we could pick another number. Our options, what is the board leaning towards?
I'm in favor of negotiating and making this work. I mean, I want this township to be easy to do, to do business in, and I know it's been quite a process so far. We need this to be successful, and it's better than an empty parking lot. So.
I could comment as well on the project, and Chris Vinarchik with RGS Associates, just I think would offer some context on the bigger picture of the project. When you do look at the full build out, because that's what we've talked about since the beginning is the master plan of the project. When you talk about the recreation needs of new residents coming in, so whether someone transplants from within the township or outside the township, they come in and move into the project, as was stated, they have recreation needs. And that need could be placed as a burden on the township to create a park, a tennis court, or so forth. In this particular application, just for again context, was mentioned we'll have a clubhouse available to those folks, which I believe will have exercise, essentially a small gym in there for them. But we'll also have the swimming pool. We'll have 2 pickleball courts. So again, I can see in the typical apartment complex where those facilities are not available, those people are going to then seek that out somewhere else in the township. But in this case, they'll have it right on site for those pickleball courts, which will also then have multi-use for basketball, also make cornhole, and then of course the ball game tracks, and a dog park, and also a top. So just wanted to kind of give context. I don't know how closely folks have looked at the plan, but we always did, go, I think, above and beyond what you see in a typical proposed multifamily community. So I would believe that many of the residents who do come in to live in this type of community will in fact do a majority of the recreating on site. Just want to be off that context. But happy to answer any questions if you have any additional on what's proposed on the overall project.
So also has 358 additional dwelling units on it, just again, to give context.
Correct.
The whole project.
Did you have a particular formula for jumping from the per acre value up to? I'm sorry, did that jump to 30? Is that your?
Should we jump to 50,000 per acre? We roughly doubled.
Did you have a formula for that? Did you have a?
No, I'm basing it on the idea that it would cost roughly that, I think, to both acquire and program additional parkland.
Close to development.
So that's what so the applicant is offering $120,000 as their total fee in lieu of parkland for this parcel's development. Our current ordinance is around $375,000.
Well, I should say, I think there's a disagreement about what the ordinance said. I would suggest that the ordinance supports our interpretation, and that obviously staff has a different opinion and disclosures.
So those are our two bookends at this point. Is we've got 120 on the left and 375 on the right. What's comfortable with the 120? Go for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal in Rockvale rent fee of $120,000. The total fee for the parking fee.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Rutt.
I'll second.
And a second by Mr. Gallagher. Any further discussion on that? No.
Just for clarity's sake, just want to make sure that staff is understanding that the trail, the area of the trail, as well as the cost of the trail are part of the overall parkland ordinance, how the applicant is addressing those requirements under the ordinance, and they're included. The other part of the proposal was that they would be paid in $30,000 per building as permit is acquired increments. So I don't know if the board wants to address that.
I will clarify your first point, Ralph. Our intention was the 120,000, no additional credit coming off from that. That will be the final number.
Yeah, so essentially the last two sentences of the letter, which has that calculation of 3.136 acres, $50,000 value per acre, which is 156,800 minus the 42,282.42 credit for pathway, 114,517.58 rounded up to 120, 30,000 per building paid at time of permit issuance. Is that what you were referencing in your motion, Mr. Ruff?
Yes.
All right. Those two sentences, that you understood it to say as well? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to accept that amount. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much for coming out tonight, and I have more agenda in the future to look at that one. Thank you.
Staff to look at any revisions to the current ordinance.
Before I forget, can we add that to our board?
Other items?
We were having that as discussion, maybe at a future meeting that we can give some guidance. Think about how we can tweak that either with a discount, a set amount, some other way to shift the incentives. All right. Item number 7A, Ameristar LLC, Plan 24-10, 2165 New Holland Pike. Is there anyone here for this project?
Good evening, everyone. Matthew Mack from Mack Engineering. This is a very, very minor project. It is a 170 square foot building addition for a stair tower being built over existing impervious surface. So they secured the development from the board a couple months ago, I believe. We were secured to prepare a stormwater management plan. We received the DMA review September 13th. We've since made the revisions, submitted back to Scott. The revisions basically entail the yellow highlights on the plan. Everything will comply. We're not asking for any waivers or any modification. We basically removed an additional 20% of the 170 square feet that was the match. So we have actually less impervious at the end of the day for this. Parking, they have 18 spaces out there today. They're only required to have 13. So all the zoning. So at this point, I'll entertain any questions, but again,
Set, or condition through this. It's from the September 13th letter. You've been addressed all those. Any questions from the board? Okay,
Make a motion to accept the Ameristar LLC Stormwater Management Plan 24-10 for 2165 New Holland Pike, as presented and subject to comments provided by the township engineer.
We have a motion by Mr. Thornton. Second by Mr. Rutt. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Next, item 7B, Echo Agreement, Weary 2321 Layman Road. Is there anyone here for this application?
Typical agreement. In this particular case, there had been a unit on the site previously. This one is a new.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the Echo Agreement.
The Echo Agreement, Weary for 2321 Layman Road as presented.
Motion by Mr. Thornton. Is there a second? Second. By Mr. Rutt. Any questions or comments? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Items 8, we have supervisor discussion items. First item is discussing our budget item regarding homelessness, as well as a resolution that I put in our packets for discussion. The board would like, I can kick off that discussion unless we want to have any other piece of it. So the big item is so I drafted this resolution to sort of try and pump into conversation, but I think it's a conversation that we should have in public and also get feedback from staff and members of the community of the best way to approach sort of this balancing act we have with our folks who are neighbors who are currently either living on private property, intersections between private property and sometimes in our own parks who don't have houses. We've had members of our neighbors who are living now quite a few years, in some cases in homeless encampments like the one behind Walmart Easttown Mall, Flory Park, for multiple years. Recently, the county has essentially cracked down on enforcement of kicking those folks out of county property. There's been reports of activity in Lancaster City where the police have also been moving people along from being able to sleep in any of the parks in the city. And subsequently, we are seeing countywide, but definitely along the Lincoln Highway corridor, we have public transportation we're seeing more of those folks sort of move out here. Now, every time you have sort of places where people have been sleeping, whenever those are cleared out, what that does is it creates a knock-on effect, if you will, both that impacts our police, our fire, our EMTs, as well as the outreach workers that the County Homelessness Coalition works with and contracts with. And the folks who are trying to help those folks either secure housing or find what they need for medication, healthcare, or sometimes helping them get an identification card so they can get a job. So the impacts become, hey, we cleared out a park or we cleared out this area, but that just shifts the cost and increases the burden on the folks sort of boots on the ground who are actually trying to help and makes it more difficult. So we've had, since sort of the activity in the city has compounded, started moving out here, we've had reports of 2 locations in East St. Peter Township where private property owners have essentially cleared out places where people were camping. So Walmart, East Town Mall, we're working on a property. There's projects in place to do that. That was one. And then recently, sort of behind where the old Tony Banks was and the Sonic property are. So we have 2 things to discuss. One is there anything we can do? What should we do? What I proposed was, is there a way that we can get our private property owners to follow a better process? I recognize that private property owners do own their property and they should be able to clear it out. But there's a good way to do that and a bad way. And I think we know this sort of naturally when we read the reports in the newsletters or the newspaper, and Walmart issues a statement saying the elected officials told us to, the police were involved, hazmat was there. We, the elected officials, did not tell them to, police weren't involved, and hazmat was not there. But they are doing construction. We would have liked them to clean up areas of their property that have been overgrown for the last decade. But there's a better way to go about doing it. They did make effort to do outreach to the folks in that camp. But the County Homelessness Coalition and the outreach workers weren't made aware of that they were getting cleared out until that specific day. And they had a couple hours to respond, and they did as best as they could. So a better practice would be advance notice, making sure that all the partners are knowledgeable that this is happening, that our police are notified, and that as best as we can, we can help folks find a place to live and secure their personal belongings. There's a lot of stuff that you have to figure out how to move very quickly. And when you wake up in your tent with all your stuff and there's a bulldozer outside, it's not a conducive environment to pack up and move. So one option is we can pursue an ordinance that would try to instruct the property owners of best practices and what they can do. The other option would be to direct township staff to try to become more aware, not be directing people to clean out encampments. And if they become aware of that, notify the board as well as the County Homelessness Coalition and the other partners that it is going on, so that they can make efforts to do what they can to help. So that's what prompted me to put the item on the agenda for discussion and drafts a resolution there to really focus on advance notice and outreach, protection of personal property, and then collaboration and coordination with the other county agencies. So that's my item for discussion. I'd love to get some feedback and the rest of the board's perspective on the issue.
Sure. So I truly believe we should be compassionate. These people have no home, no place to live, no place to store their personal items and effects. What happens when they end up in East St. Peter Park? We don't know what mental state they're in. We don't know if they're a pedophile and they're in the parks. And now we're giving them 14 more days to stay there with kids playing in the parks. That makes me a little leery of, well, number one, liability, but let these people stay there for 14 days. So I don't know what the right answer is. It's not an easy topic to handle. And as a, as a property owner, if somebody's on my property uninvited, they're not gonna stay for 14 days. So that's, I have a family to protect.
So one of the things, and thanks for putting this together, Ethan, would be, let's define what a reasonable notice is. But, I mean, we're gonna be challenged with this, especially because we're going into winter, so, if, his park is empty, Sandpier Township's probably getting 80% of the people that were camped out at Ben's Park and downtown. So, I mean, we have the bus lines, so they're coming out here. We have creeks, we have shaded areas, we have areas that it's amazing, that how good they, I mean, so who's, if it isn't a private landowner, let's say we have a landowner that doesn't reside at their property. So who can we assign being the watchdog to watch where collections of homeless people are, collecting that? So who's the early signaler? And I think the seeds persons, I think they're going to be probably more help than we think they are, because some of these homeless people are in chronic situations, mental health, things like this. So I think seeds and what we decide to fund that, I think that's going to help put boots on the ground for us, so we can figure out where these people are. But the Lancaster County has to do more. East Lampeter Township has to do more. But I mean, the overriding concern, I agree with Ted. We have to be compassionate. I mean, I walked into church Sunday, and guess who's waving an article in front of my face that I know you're an East Lampeter Township supervisor, and what about this? Well, it's not really the way I want to be addressed, but I mean, she had every right to ask.
I certainly echo a lot of things that are being said, and this is an issue that, I'm personally tackling in other elements of my professional and personal life, but especially here at East Lampeter Township. I don't know how long the encampment was there, and I know they used the number of 20, but I would be very wary of legitimizing the word encampment, because I could say, well, what is an encampment? Someone could put a tent in my backyard, or maybe 2 or 3 people. And then I see things that respectfully well put together, Ethan, but it's talking about how the private property owner is being made to do certain things. I'd be more comfortable with a resolution regarding homelessness. And one of the aspects of that would be, here are the procedures that we use, and we direct our police department and other service providers that are at the township level. That this is the way we handle that, with many of the things that you talked about. Like, look, if it turns out that, people are in a space they're not supposed to be in. And we're in a tough position right now because emergency shelter was closed downtown. They are in December. Hopefully they'll have another one. But like, an encampment is essentially an illegal activity. And we should not legitimize anything that's illegal. And, it's at the same time, there's a special population, lots of mental illness, mental health issues, drug and alcohol problems, other things. But I don't know how long the people were back there. I don't know if there are some people saying, well, I'd rather live like this. And we don't let them do it in our public parks. And we don't have an ordinance that tells us what to do about that. We just handle it. And what does handle it mean? Do the police go and say you must leave now? But we've talked about our police being equipped with any social service, providing information, trying to get that information out. I'm not opposed to an ordinance that's talking about how we handle the homeless population. I think the way it's written, there's a piece of it to me that makes it sound like an encampment is now something that has a series of rights around it. And I worry about, we're talking about property owners. Yes, some of these are very large. If they weren't following ordinances that we have on the books about cleaning their property up, that's an issue we have to address. But I would suggest, I think you have many pieces in there that could be in a homeless resolution. I'd be happy to work on that with you. And how do we balance, like the second piece, the township acknowledges the need to balance the rights of property owners with humane treatment of individuals. That would go just about anywhere, anything. And I respect that it's there. The township has a responsibility to protect the citizens and the private property rights of those people. And always just, whatever the laws are about how we treat other people. I think they're ingrained in the laws that we have. So I'd be happy to work on that with you. I'm afraid of the word encampment. I don't know exactly what it means. Where could it be? Where could that happen? You could make an argument, anybody who can't see all of their property, you could have, because it's out of sight and they don't notice it until later, depending on how much property. I would notice it, because I have a very small property, but I guess that's my feedback right now.
And just two quick responses I'd love to get. Questions I'd love to have the staff address. One is it is illegal housing currently, but you're not allowed to do that. However, that similarly, staying past 30 days in our hotels is also an illegal activity, but we know we have 129 students in CV who are in some form of homelessness. I think about 30 are in hotels right now. Those aren't activities that we're actively cracking out on. If we went out to every location that we knew or suspected was housing people illegally, pushed them off the street, we would have a significantly greater crisis on our hands. And so we're not doing that. We're trying to slowly address those problems over time. This to me is very similar to, the camp behind Walmart's been there for at least 4 years. It's been there as long as I've been there. And our police do have a good bit of leeway in addressing folks who are camping in the park, and have done a very good job of not just kicking everyone out who they find sleeping. And because the challenge is right now, there's no legal place to sleep if you don't have a house. So there's nowhere where you can go in the entire county where you're allowed to, I can spend the night and not be disturbed by someone pushing me along to the next location. So that's the challenge that we face at the county level, is there's no legal safe place to literally close your eyes and lay down. And I think that one we should look at addressing as well. But part of me, and I agree, the resolution here shifts all the enforcement to the property owner, and that's because my current challenge is with my understanding from the property owners I've heard from, and either first or second hand, is that our township staff was the ones that were directing them to clear out the encampments. And if our staff was following some of these best practices, then we wouldn't have been in this situation. But unfortunately, that's what I'm hearing from the developer or the property owners is this isn't necessarily something that they're jumping at the gun to do. It's they feel that they're being directed by staff to do it. And I'd love to have staff address that. Is that a direction that's being communicated to the property owners that you should clear these places out? Or is that something the property owners are coming up with on their own, and what they're saying to me is incorrect?
I've had conversations with property owners about nuisance conditions on their properties. in violation of the township's nuisance ordinance. And they've asked questions about how they can address them, given the conditions there. And we've talked about what their options are. And one of the options that has always come up is, what if the brush was removed? The other thing that happens, quite honestly, as the initial contact is a police event that takes place, and they're called to these locations to address something that is happening or has happened at those locations. And they encounter conditions at these locations that are candidly unfit for people to live in. There's trash, debris, frequently needles, frequently human waste type conditions at these locations. And our police officers don't necessarily want to go into those unsafe conditions themselves. So when we become aware of those sorts of nuisance, what our nuisance ordinance addresses is, trash, debris, accumulation, conditions. Yes, staff makes contact with the property owners about cleaning them up.
Specifically with the Walmart property, I emailed several times to say, was there police activity that we have reports of? And to this date, I've not gotten any response that there was any precipitating police report for that encampment.
They've been at that location a number of times.
Over what period? Over the last 4 years or the last 4 weeks? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Is there something happened that recently, which is what I had been asking previously, that precipitated this, or wasn't there?
But I think you have to look at that situation. I know it's this, we just keep banging up against the walls because, well, there's nowhere to go. So they have found a haven of some sort. I hope there weren't any children in the 20 that were there, but I think about how many children, let's say, just look at the other side of it. How many children are in a square mile of that area? How many children are even closer than that, from the park to Walmart to the Explorer? Maybe kids don't go around and explore like they used to, but I certainly did. And I'd come across that right away. And if nobody was there, you'd be looking around the stuff, you'd be seeing what was there. I mean, it's not safe. It's not good for them. It's not good for our community. And I think some of the things that you've written in here certainly could be procedurally what we do.
Sure.
Based on our people, from the public works folks to the police, to say, look, we're doing this in a humane way, but humane for everybody involved. I really have concerns about, children especially coming into contact to just stumbling across this kind of thing. And what potential issues there could be with that. And I think you have to think that way first. And, we have Homeless Coalition. We've got people really thinking about it. I think it's going to be a tough couple of months before they open that new facility. Hopefully it will be open. Is it Otterbein Church? Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a real help to us. I think they're working on it. But I appreciate what you're saying. Strike force comes in, no notice, and everybody's up in arms. Now, notwithstanding, if the police were looking for somebody, we don't need to tell them we're looking for them. But I understand that. I think there is a way to do that without further trauma to everybody involved. But and just the police officers that I talk to too, syringes and drug activity. We've got a fentanyl crisis. Luckily, it's not quite as bad as it was a few years ago, according to our police reports. But yeah, I do think this is workable. I'd almost like to see it based in homeless, and encampment could be something identified in it. But is it 2 or more people, 3 or more, and what places could they end up? And if that were the case, and we have this, hey, we have to follow this ordinance to do that, just think it's a little cumbersome for the people that we have, the police and so forth, to do their jobs. And I think they do it very well here, and I also think they would do it with a great deal of concern for the people that are there, who are there because they're especially having personal problems, be they those that we've already talked about, so.
The only other thing I would say is that I would suggest that as a first step, and maybe the last step, would be to look at establishing policy for staff to follow, rather than trying to put this forward as an actual ordinance.
I think that's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah, I believe that.
You also, in addition to what you've been provided, you're also provided with township solicitor's opinion on this concept, and I would encourage you to review that thoroughly.
Thank you for any public comment?
Sue Orr from CDP. What I wanted to say is maybe we need to think outside of the box. We're always going to have homeless people. My son lives in San Diego, and what the city did was they bought a piece of property where they gave the people tents, and they can actually live there with a dumpster, with a bathroom, so that all the issues that you talked about are, not all of them, but they can be taken care of better. And the people then could live there for 8 months. In this country. Now, our climate's different than San Diego, but here, really from April through November, they could live in a tent. We're going to have drug addicts. We're going to have homeless people. We're going to have mentally ill people. How is the best way for us to really be compassionate and keep them housed and safe? We could have a piece of property away from where children are, so you wouldn't have to worry about children being accosted. And most homeless people aren't pedophiles. They're normal people like you and me that walk around. So just a suggestion is maybe we need to think outside the box and not just think about shoving them away, but how do we really work with that? Because shoving them just moves them to some other property. Somebody else now has the problem because they're still here. They're just in some other location. So I think by having a place, the outreach people can meet with them regularly, other facilities, we could work with the Homeless Coalition. There's lots of things that we can do that would better and maybe enhance the people that are homeless. So just want to say, and I'd be willing to serve on that board because I think there's other options, with the homeless people. So that's it.
Thank you.
All right, so it sounds like what I'm hearing, and I'd be happy to maybe follow up with you, Mike, on shifting this ordinance or shifting the discussion to what are the guidelines that our staff should be following. Again, not an ordinance that mandates exactly how things are done, but here's the set of guidelines that are based off of the best practices. I know I've had conversations with the Homeless Coalition of there's a better way that you could have done this. And I'd love to I've had conversations with them with Tenfold, with Seeds to say, because the problem is not just are we shifting the problem to the next piece, but we're breaking the small slivers of trust that have been established by our outreach workers. So if Seeds does outreach to someone at an encampment behind Walmart, for example, and then they're pushed out, not only are they hard to find, but next time they're found, they're less likely to want to be found because they're scared that if someone's going to talk and share their location, and then they're going to be pushed out. So they go to ground in a way that, so we have to have folks on the ground who can build that trust and maintain it so that we can get them access to services, so that we can get them clean off the street and into housing. But the more we shuffle people around, the less likely it is that they're actually going to receive care. So I'll follow up with you, Mike, and the board, continue the discussion and maybe do a set of guidelines for staff to follow.
I think that's a great idea. It's a good stimulus for that. I'd welcome the police present on I don't want to say it's a committee already, but, to hear from them, maybe Public Works to hear from them. Yeah, welcome to do that.
Okay. Any other discussion on that or any other items for supervisor discussion?
I just want to report the township did meet with folks from Seeds, and we've kicked off that process as directed by the board.
So we'll have on supervisor discussion, maybe just to say it, the other item about ordinance. Yes,
Future meeting.
yeah, future meeting.
And that's a future supervisor discussion. Thank you, Mike, for reminding us of that. All right, move on to item number 9A. Hand-in-hand fire police request to assist Strasburg Halloween parade.
Yes, we received this request, from Borough Strasburg for their Halloween parade. I did confirm with Chief Boyer at the Hand Fire Company that they wanted to help with that event, for workers' comp purposes. In order to have those that are helping covered appropriately, it requires board action to authorize it.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve, hand-in-hand fire police to assist Strasburg in the Halloween parade, which, involved coverage from GLT's workers' comp insurance plan.
All right, motion and a second. Is there discussion? Not all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 9B, designate David Sinopoli as Township Building Code official.
With the departure of Alicia and Colin, David is the only remaining person on staff that has that qualification. And so previously it had been Colin, and then he could direct others to carry out that function. David's the only one on staff that we have at this point, so we asked the board to name him until we have someone else who can fill that role.
What is that qualification?
Building code official.
So we're designating him as that, but you said he was the only one who had the qualification to be designated as the building code official.
Correct.
So what is what is that
The certification.
certification that?
Building code official. That's
That is the
That's what it's
certification through the Department of Labor and Industry. It's a 5-day course that you go through.
He's the only person who's completed that course. Okay. All right,
Motion to formally designate Dave Sinopoli as the township's building code official.
motion by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Rutt. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Item 9C, resolution regarding the financing of police radios.
The board a couple of months ago accepted the proposal from MT Bank to finance the purchase of the new police radios. The bank has come back and said that they would like to have this resolution adopted in order to meet their internal needs. We understand that the radios are probably going to be delivered sometime in the next month or so. So we want to get this lined up so that the financing is in place when the radios arrive.
Is there a motion?
Looking for the bank.
And
Finance, these radios.
that you've already done. This is just a resolution.
Moving the resolution.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to accept the resolution regarding the financing of police radios by MT Bank.
Second. Motion by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Gallagher. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes. Item 10, managers report.
Yes, we received notice from PennDOT that our multimodal funding request for the Lancaster Heritage Pathway was not funded in the latest round. The letter goes on to say that if you want the same application considered in the next funding round, there's a process for doing that. Staff is happy to do that if that's what the board would like. There is, that continuing township commitment of funding. If the it's one. I should have looked at that. I apologize. But you had included that in the budget previously. So whatever amount was in the budget previously would have to be continued if you want to apply again.
Did they give us a feedback, any bullet points on why?
No, really, it's just a very, they say it's very competitive, lots of good applications. We received 182 applications for assistance. The evaluation team reviewed and evaluated the applications, extremely competitive process. As numerous important transportation projects were proposed that would positively impact the citizens.
Yeah. You need a motion.
Yeah. For now,
It's just staff to.
Unless are you looking for action to be taken, Ralph?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the dates on this, but I think,
Authorized to reallocate.
September 23 and November 5, we would have to submit the application. So, yeah, it'd be helpful to have board authorization to do that.
I'll make a motion that the board authorize staff to indicate to PennDOT they would like the application considered in the next round within the timeframes identified.
Second. Moved by Mr. Thornton, second by Mr. Rutt. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes.
The next item was the nuisance hotel ordinance. Chief Zerby put together some statistical information. We completed a year of enforcement under that ordinance. And, just wanted to share that information with the board and probably any questions you might have based on that data.
Well, I would say it's working. I think we're getting some positive results from it.
Yeah, Chief feels in particular, although it's hard to quantify, that the hotel operators have been calling more frequently to report those things that are happening on their own properties. So that's definitely been a positive.
I read that was like 60%.
That's his best guess as to the numbers, yes.
We're comfortable with the self-reporting, which is one of the things that you wanted improved.
Yeah, the only thing that other thing that I took from this was that, we had 2 locations that triggered that next level of enforcement, where, chief goes out and discusses it with them, comes up with a plan, and they follow through on the plan. And both of those places, they did that, but there are other locations that had more events over the year, but because of the 60-day time period, never triggered that next level of involvement. So, that was kind of interesting to me.
That'd be probably one of, maybe get chief's feedback as well, but might be worth looking at doing an amendment to the ordinance to lengthen that period of time.
Okay.
It seems to have been working well where we've had those that we seem to. Plans are in place with the chief and the property owner to better address the issues.
I think that'd be a board discussion item, and then we know chief will be here. So.
That's a future voice.
Great. The only other thing I want to announce that the conditional use hearing for property at 24 Pike is scheduled for 4:30 p.m. on the 1st of October. And following that at 6 p.m. on the same date, there'll be a hearing on a proposed liquor license transfer to 2453 Old Pike. The business improvement district was also discussed with the Commercial Industrial Development Authority earlier this evening. The hearing on the plan sort of tentatively looking at the 18th of November. I'll be in touch with the board members about scheduling that potentially immediately prior to the board meeting. So check your calendars for me when you get a chance. Thank you.
You up?
Yes, thank you.
I'll enter, any final public comment from the board or the public?
I just have a clarification. I did not mean to imply that all homeless are criminals or files. It's just not something I want kids around, and I've been in many.
I understand. Place.
See, I think that would cause more enablement in a way.
Yeah, but it's not a perfect. Yeah.
No easy answer. But we're keeping the conversation going. So I appreciate, how to say, I appreciate the engagement from the public as well as the board on this issue. I know it's one I care about. I know each of you cares about it, but I appreciate that we're discussing it. And I see a lot of other folks around not discussing it. So we're at least having the discussion, and figuring out what we can do, what's our part. So I appreciate everyone's input tonight. All right, I'll chain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. You're adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.